Welcome to the National Archives and Records Administration's 2025 Genealogy Series. My name is Erin Townsend, and I'm the coordinator of this year's program. We are so happy you've joined us. Every year, the National Archives hosts the Genealogy Series, a free educational genealogy event broadcast on YouTube. Our presenters are records experts from National Archives locations across the United States. The sessions offer family history research tools on federal records and are open to everyone, from beginners to experienced family historians. All are welcome. We invite you to join the conversation. During each session's premiere, you can participate with the presenters and other family historians via live chat. Ask questions and get the presenters' answers anytime throughout the video and for an additional 10 minutes after the presentation ends. Here's how to engage in the live chat. You can ask questions via chat by first logging into YouTube. Continue to watch chat because the speaker will answer the questions there. Type your questions at any time throughout the presentation. Please keep your questions on today's topic. We are offering 5 genealogy sessions in May and June, starting May 13th and ending June 17th. If you miss a premiere broadcast, please know that the videos and handouts remain available online after the event, where you can view them at your convenience. Welcome to today's presentation titled Washington, D.C. Law and Order, Cops and Robbers, 1861 to 1991. Our presenter today is M. Marie Maxwell. Marie served as a processing archive specialist at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. For nearly 20 years, she processed and worked with several District of Columbia-focused record groups. She is currently serving as an archivist in the Special Access and FOIA program at the National Archives at College Park, Maryland. Welcome, Marie. Thank you for your presentation today.
Thank you for joining me for this presentation. In the criminal justice system, the people are represented by 2 separate important groups: the police who investigate crime and the courts, with judges, lawyers, and other staff. In the cases of the United States of America versus whomever, there's the criminal who allegedly commits the crime. The people we are looking for in the National Archives records are the members of DC law enforcement or the Metropolitan Police Department, MPD, and those who have had some connection on the other side of that enforcement. I will present some options for uncovering the genealogical stories of cops and robbers and other alleged criminals in Washington, D.C. Now, by Washington, D.C. or the District of Columbia, I'm including Washington City, also known as Old City, and Georgetown. This includes Washington County, which later developed areas such as Columbia Heights, Brookland, and Anacostia. A record group is a collection of records that originated from a single government entity, bureau, or agency. The primary focus of this presentation are 2 record groups for our cops and criminals: Record Group 21 and Record Group 351. I will briefly point to other places where DC cops and robbers can be located in FBI and DOJ files in record groups 60 and 65. Record Group, or RG21, are the records of district courts of the United States. The National Archives in our facilities from coast to coast have regional records for district courts. At the National Archives in Washington, D.C., also called A1 or Archives 1, RG21 includes civil and criminal court records for the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, 1801 to 1863, which later became the Supreme Court of the District of Columbia, 1863 to 1936, and then back to the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia in 1936. Record Group 351, the records of the government of the District of Columbia, is very special. From its inception in 1791 on the banks of the Potomac River until obtaining home rule on December 24, 1973, the District of Columbia was a part of the U.S. federal government. RG 351 is a treasure trove of local Washington, D.C. history. Not just D.C. as the nation's capital, but also a city where people live, with records covering mundane municipal issues such as building permits, property taxes, and the local police. Prior to Home Rule, during the period this presentation covers, the President of the United States appointed the leaders of the District of Columbia, be they the 3 board commissioners or the mayor and council. To illustrate how the series could be used and what value it might have, I'm going to start with the census. If you locate someone in the DC Census who was a policeman in this 1870 to 1920-ish period, consider visiting Archives 1 to look at Record Groups 351, entry PI 186-119. Personnel case files, circa 1861 to 1950. Here in the 1870 census, because this series begins after the 1860 census, Thomas Lawler is occupied as a Met Police or Metropolitan policeman. In the personnel case files, you can locate people who were members of the DC Metropolitan Police and possibly their dependents, roughly between the 1860s to 1900s, maybe the 1920s. It's arranged in alphabetical order by surname, so you will not need to know the dates of service or the precinct where they worked. One of the easier ways to get to this series in the National Archives catalog at catalog.archives.gov is to use the National Archives Identifier, or NAID number, 1449242, in the search field. Only a sampling of the records have been digitized, but from that sample, we will see the kinds of material you might find. I chose Thomas Lawler because his file is one of the 5 digitized in the catalog. Thomas Lawler was born in 1832 in County Kerry, Ireland. He immigrated to the United States in 1850. Lawler appeared in a previous slide as a Met police officer. In the National Archives catalog, you will find the file unit Lawler, Thomas, appointed January 31st, 1867, which is 12 pages and a PDF of those 12 pages. Although his appointment was in 1867, there are a few letters of recommendation from 1866 describing him as a trustworthy and reliable man. A majority of these records will be written in cursive handwriting. The optical character recognition, or OCR, does make a stab at transcribing what is written, but it is not 100% correct. Many of these files contain an application. In Lawler's case, there is a page with 32 questions asking about his physical state, his family, and his drinking when it comes to intoxicating liquors. These are the things the MPD cared about in the 1860s. The application can confirm or bring into question other points of data in your genealogical research. And where else will you get the question, well, say 11, when did you drink intoxicating liquors last? Things happen in a career, and a little of this is captured in Lawler's file. November 1880, Lawler was brought before the Metropolitan Police Trial Committee in regards to entering a home where a grocery was kept, one night uninvited. It's just the one page with no information about the outcome. There are things that are not in this file that maybe you would think would have been. He sustained injuries on the job as reported in the November 8th, 1869 National Republican. This is not in the personnel file, nor is his death in 1882, when, as reported by the Evening Critic, November 13th, 1882, he was at the station at 10 p.m. He became very ill at work and went home, where he died. His death does not appear in this file. There is a record of death for Officer James Boswell, whose file has not been digitized. The kind of information in his file may appear in others, and I want to highlight the possible treasures that might be found. James Boswell was an African-American man who was born in 1866 in Virginia. In 1892, he was a laborer and married his wife, Hattie Sheldon. He was appointed to the police force in 1895. Thankfully, there is a timeline in Boswell's file. There are several pieces of correspondence relating to the 1907 and 1908 complaints against Boswell, which were racial in nature. There are letters written in Boswell's hand, telling his side of the story. We are provided more detail than what was found in Lawler's file. As a result of the complaint, Boswell was transferred to another beat in 1907. Included in the file is a handwritten letter by Dr. W. Thompson Birch. The handwriting isn't the clearest, but the doctor claims Boswell contracted a disease in the line of duty. June 29, 1912, Boswell retired from the force, and about 10 days later, he died on July 9th. The Boswell file does not end with his death. There is an August 24, 1912 letter from Dr. Simeon L. Carson recapping the circumstances of Boswell's widow, Hattie's death. According to Carson, Hattie was his patient and confined to her bed suffering from heart and leg problems when she was compelled to appear before the pension board on August 7th. If it isn't obvious, she died before she could collect a widow's pension. As another example of pension issues appearing in these personnel files, this is a July 5th, 1902 letter from Lawrence A. Latchford's file. Latchford is one of the handful of digitized files in the catalog. In this example, Latchford's minor children, daughters May Frances and Estelle Latchford, would receive $12.50 a month from the police fund, which also supplied Latchford's pension. Now, records are organic. There's no guarantee of what you may find in your person's file. You may find an application, letters of recommendation, information about their beneficiaries, or other minor details that occurred during their law enforcement career, and maybe even hear from the person themselves. The personnel case files are not the only records where law enforcement personnel may appear, but they are the most accessible. Moving on to DC robbers, thieves, and conmen. From this point on, we will talk about the criminals of the criminal justice system. These are persons suspected and or accused of violating the city's criminal laws. Remaining in record group 351, let's take a look at identification books circa 1878 to 1896, created by the Metropolitan Police. They have been digitized and are fully available online. According to the catalog description, more than half of the cards were for persons who were arrested in the District of Columbia. The other half are a mix of those arrested in New York, Philadelphia, and maybe Baltimore, Maryland. A majority of the people were arrested for some form of theft, break-ins, robberies, and the like. These cards have identifying information such as the person's photograph, name, alias if any, crime, age, color, place of birth, trade, height, weight, hair and eye color, complexion, date of arrest, and surnames of arresting officers. Even if you don't have an ancestor who may have been a DC criminal, this series is fascinating on a visual level. It is an interesting collection of late 19th century menswear and haircuts. In this example, Emile Montrop or Montrose is wearing a bowler hat, overcoat, and jacket, and was arrested for housebreaking. David C. Bliss, aka Doctor, is sporting a mustache, wearing a coat with pocket kerchief, and what appears to be a light-colored cravat. His card is one of the New York entries, where he is described as a sneak thief. Lastly, James T. Allen's information card has a remark where we today would refer to him as bi or multiracial. This might provide information of why he might appear in some records as being in one racial group and another in other documents. Because the photographs are described at the item level, all you will need to do to search for your ancestor's name in the search box is just write it in. If that brings more records that don't apply, you can narrow it by using the advanced search feature. Limit the name to the title and narrowing it to record group 351. Let's take a look at record group 21, where you will find the greatest number of people in entry A1-77A's index to criminal cases and dockets, circa 1938 to 1991. This has been mostly digitized. It was physical cards and microfilm. The cards were all digitized. If you can find the person who you are looking for in this index, you can use the court number to track down more information about the infraction they were involved with. Court cases are like a box of mystery chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. This index is arranged in alphabetical order by last, then first name. For this exercise, I will use my own surname, Maxwell, and look for my grandpa James to show you how you would use this index. Maxwell fits between Martina and May F, which is a file unit in this series. Sometimes the catalog can be a little challenging. You could try typing the name of the person you are searching for. However, not everything has been transcribed, and the OCR can be a little quirky. The extracted text, if you click at the top button to the right, will show what the OCR looks like. And there is a space between the J and the Ames in James. So if typing in a name in the search bar doesn't yield any results, you may wish to conduct a visual search. There are two important numbers here. Under GJ is the grand jury case number. Under CRIM is the criminal court case number. If you have the case numbers, you won't need the docket books, but I'll mention them as a resource. The dockets are just a log of the case through the system. They may provide information when there's no case to be found in the criminal case files. Cases after 1947 for this DC court will have a case number year format. Looking at the two numbers here, one for the grand jury is 348-56, and the criminal case number is 338-56. Sometimes this is reversed on the court documents, with the year first and the case number second. Here, the 56 is the year, thus this took place in 1956. With this case number, I would then reach out to Reference at Archives 1 for assistance in locating the criminal case file. In the later 1960s, the criminal offense was added to the cards. In this example, for a James Maxwell Jr., we can see it is 1969 and the crime involved the Narcotic Act. As mentioned earlier, our facilities across the nation have regional records for district courts, and many also have indexes. In addition to criminal court, we have civil and other court files. There are over 1,000 file units for various U.S. district courts across the country, and some have been digitized, and others are waiting to be discovered in our holdings. Very briefly, and expanding beyond the boundaries of the District of Columbia, I will mention another place to look for people ranging from police, sheriffs, suspects, criminals, victims, witnesses, and many, many more are in FBI, RG65, and Department of Justice, DOJ, RG60 files. For the Department of Justice, there is the General Name Index file. Contact Archives 2 reference in College Park for assistance. Now, speaking as a researcher, my best strategy for finding FBI records of people I'm searching for was to contact the FBI directly. You can find their FOIA page by doing a web search or navigating their website. I have a URL here, and it will be listed as one of many resources on my handout. Before talking about finding FBI records, I would like to show one example of how a DOJ file can provide more information about a law enforcement or other justice-involved person you may be researching. In File 144-16-95, exploring a civil rights violation, DC police officers Dewey H. Taylor Jr. and Arthur Patrick were investigated. But for this case, Taylor and Patrick declined to be interviewed, so we don't hear from them directly. But we do get short biographies. In this one for Officer Dewey Hobson Taylor Jr., we discover he joined the Army as a minor and was honorably discharged. Going back to the FBI, another option to contact them is dropping a line via the U.S. Postal Service or emailing them directly. However, their FOIA portal is the quickest method. Once again, speaking as a researcher, make sure their emails don't wind up in your spam box. When they sent me a response email, it had links to further correspondence or the documents I requested. Those links were good for 48 hours. However, the links could be reactivated twice for another 48 hours. I recommend contacting the FBI first because they still have some of their archival records. Sometimes the links they provide are to documents. So far, I have gotten hundreds of pages free. I'm sure there's a limit on the number and type of free documents, and I have yet to find out what that is. So hopefully you will be blessed with the same luck if you are looking for one or two people. Other times, the links have been to letters about my research request. Those letters were form letters, so be aware of which boxes are checked. In this letter, the FBI told me that the document I wanted was transferred to the National Archives, and I should go there, or here, with a specific file number, circled here in red. Hopefully, this presentation has given you some ideas of where to look if your ancestor was a DC cop or a DC robber. What you may find in the record group 351 or RG21 records could just provide the general basics, confirming or confusing your existing research, or it can provide a peek into a chapter in your family's life that was previously unknown. I hope this has inspired you to plan a visit to our facilities in Washington, D.C., and reach out to our staff. I want to thank you for your time, and I'll be happy to take questions and answer them to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Thank you again for watching. This ends the lecture portion of the broadcast, but we will continue to take your questions about today's topic in the chat. If we do not get to your question, please send us an email at inquire@nara.gov. Videos and handouts from the program will remain available on this YouTube page and our website. We plan future programs based on your feedback. Would you please take a minute to complete our short online evaluation form? At this time, I'd like to thank the Genealogy Series team who contributed to the success of this program. We are grateful for your work. If you enjoyed this video, check out our Know Your Records program. We have over 100 educational videos on how to conduct research at the National Archives. Although this concludes the video portion of the broadcast, we will continue to take your questions in the chat for another 10 minutes. Please stay if you have questions. Thank you for joining us for today's presentation.